The soft morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of a modest church, casting vibrant hues across the wooden pews. Father Samuel, a man well into his 70s with a kind demeanor and a gentle voice, began his day as he always did, with quiet prayer. The church, nestled on the edge of a quiet village, had been his home and sanctuary for over 3 decades. He had watched generations grow, marry, and find solace within its walls. As Father Samuel moved through the aisle, his steps echoing faintly, he noticed something unusual. The small alcove housing the statue of Mary seemed livelier than usual. At first, he assumed it was the way the morning light struck the corner, making it appear different. But as he approached, the scene came into focus. A flock of pigeons crowded around the statue, their feathers ruffled and their eyes watchful. The statue itself was a beautifully carved piece of stone, depicting Mary with her arms outstretched in a gesture of welcome. It had always been a beloved centerpiece of the church, often adorned with fresh flowers left by parishioners. Yet now, the pigeons perched on its base and wings, their presence oddly out of place in the sacred space. Father Samuel paused, his brow furrowing. Pigeons were not uncommon in the village, often seen cooing on rooftops or fluttering around the town square. But they rarely entered the church, and certainly not in such numbers. He waved his hands gently, trying to shoo them away. "Go on now," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is not your place." The birds, however, remained unmoved. They shifted slightly, their wings rustling, but none took flight. Their gaze seemed fixed on the statue, as though drawn to it by an invisible force. Father Samuel stepped back, unsure of what to make of their behavior. He decided to leave them be for the moment, thinking perhaps they would disperse on their own. The rest of the day passed uneventfully. Parishioners came and went, their visits punctuated by quiet prayers and the occasional lit candle. Yet, whenever Father Samuel glanced toward the alcove, the pigeons remained. By evening, he could no longer ignore their presence. After locking the church doors for the night, he returned to the alcove, carrying a broom in one hand. He hoped a gentle nudge would encourage the birds to leave. As he approached, the stillness of the church seemed to amplify every sound. The creak of the floorboards beneath his feet, the soft cooing of the pigeons. He raised the broom, intending to sweep lightly near the statue's base, but something stopped him. A strange feeling settled over him, a mix of curiosity and reverence. The pigeons weren't behaving like typical birds. They seemed calm, almost solemn, their eyes reflecting the flickering glow of the nearby candles. Father Samuel lowered the broom, his heart pounding slightly. He knelt before the statue, his gaze moving from the birds to the serene face of Mary. "What is it?" he murmured, his voice trembling slightly. "What are you trying to tell me?" The pigeons remained still, their quiet presence both unsettling and comforting. Father Samuel stayed there for a long time, his mind racing with questions. Was this a sign, a message, or simply a coincidence that had taken on a life of its own in his imagination? When he finally rose to his feet, he decided to let the matter rest for the night. He left the pigeons undisturbed, retreating to his small quarters at the back of the church. Yet, sleep did not come easily. He lay awake, the image of the pigeons and the statue etched into his mind. Something about the scene felt significant, though he couldn't quite grasp why. By morning, Father Samuel's curiosity had grown into determination. He resolved to observe the pigeons more closely, hoping their behavior might offer some clue to their unusual presence. As the day unfolded, he began to notice details he had overlooked before. The way the pigeons seemed to shift their focus between Mary's face and her hands, the way they huddled together as though protecting something unseen. The church grew busier as the morning gave way to afternoon. Parishioners began to notice the pigeons too, their whispers filling the air as they speculated about the birds' behavior. Some saw it as a sign of divine presence, while others dismissed it as an oddity of nature. Father Samuel listened to their theories with a thoughtful expression, his own questions deepening. That evening, as the last rays of sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, Father Samuel stood before the statue once more. The pigeons had not moved, their vigil as steadfast as it had been the day before. He clasped his hands together, his voice steady as he spoke. If there is something I need to see, show me. If there is something I need to understand, guide me. The pigeons stirred slightly, their wings rustling in unison. Father Samuel's breath caught as he felt a sense of peace wash over him, as though an unseen presence had answered his prayer. He knew then that the pigeons' vigil was no coincidence. There was a reason they had come, and he was determined to discover it. The early morning sun cast a warm glow over the pews, but Father Samuel's mind was far from the usual tranquility of his church. The pigeons remained perched around the statue of Mary, their vigil unbroken. Their stillness seemed to fill the sanctuary with a quiet tension, as if the air itself held its breath. After the morning prayers, Father Samuel decided it was time to seek advice. He called Sister Marguerite, an old friend and a historian with a passion for religious artifacts and symbols. Her knowledge often proved invaluable in deciphering the mysteries of the Church. When Sister Marguerite arrived, her sharp eyes immediately fell on the statue and its unusual guardians. "This is strange," she murmured, stepping closer. She studied the pigeons, her brow furrowed. Pigeons rarely behave like this indoors, especially not in such numbers. Have they moved at all? Father Samuel shook his head. Not since I first noticed them yesterday. They shift slightly, but they haven't left the statue. Sister Marguerite tilted her head, her gaze moving to the statue's serene face. Have you inspected the statue closely? Looked for anything unusual? Father Samuel hesitated. The idea hadn't occurred to him before. To him, the statue of Mary was a familiar and comforting presence, something he had taken for granted for decades. "No," he admitted. "I've never thought to." Sister Marguerite nodded. "Let's take a closer look. There may be something here we've overlooked." Together, they approached the statue. The pigeons stirred slightly but did not flee. Sister Marguerite examined the base of the statue first, running her fingers over the stone surface. "It's beautifully carved," she remarked. "But look here." She pointed to a faint engraving near the bottom, partially obscured by dust and time. Father Samuel squinted, leaning closer. The inscription was faint, almost imperceptible, but the words became clearer as he wiped away the dust. It read, "Benedicta es tu inter mulieres. Blessed art thou among women." "It's part of the Hail Mary," Sister Marguerite said softly. "But why carve it here so discreetly?" Father Samuel's heart quickened. Could it mean something? Perhaps a connection to the pigeons? Sister Marguerite didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped back, her gaze scanning the statue from head to toe. Her sharp eyes caught something on Mary's outstretched hands, a faint shimmer. She moved closer, her breath catching as she realized what she was seeing. "There's moisture," she whispered. Father Samuel frowned, stepping beside her. Sure enough, small beads of water clung to Mary's fingertips, catching the morning light like tiny gems. He reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing the cool surface. The moisture was undeniable, and it sent a shiver through him. How is this possible? There's no leak, no water source nearby. Sister Marguerite crossed herself, her voice trembling. It's not natural, Samuel. This could be a sign, a miracle." The word hung heavily in the air, and Father Samuel felt a mix of awe and trepidation. He had always believed in the divine, but to witness something inexplicable within his own church was overwhelming. "A miracle," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "But what does it mean?" Before Sister Marguerite could respond, the pigeons let out a soft cooing, their wings rustling as though in agreement. Both she and Father Samuel turned to them, their hearts pounding. The birds remained still, their golden eyes fixed on Mary's hands. "We need to document this," Sister Marguerite said, her voice steady despite the excitement in her eyes. "If this is truly a miracle, the Church will need to verify it." Father Samuel nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. The inscription, the moisture, the pigeons' unwavering vigil, it all felt connected, but the pieces of the puzzle eluded him. He knelt before the statue, his hands clasped in prayer. "Blessed Mother," he murmured, "if you have brought this to us, guide me to understand." As if in response, a single pigeon took flight, its wings beating softly as it circled the sanctuary before landing again at Mary's feet. Father Samuel's breath caught, his heart pounding as he looked at Sister Marguerite. "This isn't just for us to see," he said softly. "There's something we're meant to do." Sister Marguerite nodded. "Perhaps it's a call to action, a message waiting to be revealed." That evening, as the sun set and the sanctuary grew quiet, Father Samuel sat alone before the statue. The pigeons still surrounded it, their presence a constant reminder of the mystery. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, a calling to protect whatever sacred purpose had drawn the birds to his church. "Tomorrow," he whispered, his voice steady. "Tomorrow we will uncover the truth." The next morning, the church was alive with whispers. News of the pigeons and the moisture on Mary's hands had spread through the village, drawing curious parishioners and skeptics alike. Father Samuel stood at the entrance, greeting visitors with a calm but wary expression. He didn't want to dismiss their curiosity, but he also feared the sacred nature of the event might be overshadowed by gossip. Sister Marguerite arrived early, carrying a small notebook and camera to document the phenomenon. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice low as she joined Father Samuel near the statue. He nodded, though his heart felt heavy. "As ready as I can be. I just hope we're doing this for the right reasons." Sister Marguerite gave him a reassuring look. "We're seeking understanding, Samuel. That's never wrong." Together, they approached the statue. The pigeons remained steadfast, their quiet presence now oddly comforting. The moisture on Mary's hands glistened in the morning light, unchanged since the day before. Sister Marguerite began her documentation, snapping photos and jotting down notes while Father Samuel knelt in silent prayer. As he prayed, a faint memory surfaced, a story his predecessor had told him decades ago. It was about a hidden relic, something sacred that had once been entrusted to the church but had since been forgotten. Father Samuel opened his eyes, his gaze falling to the base of the statue where the inscription was carved. "What if there's more beneath this?" he murmured. Sister Marguerite paused, lowering her camera. "Beneath the statue? You think something is hidden there?" Father Samuel nodded, his voice growing more confident. "The pigeons aren't just drawn to Mary, they're guarding her. And the moisture? It could be a sign, pointing us to something deeper." The idea seemed far-fetched, but Sister Marguerite saw the conviction in his eyes. "Then we need to investigate," she said. "Carefully." They retrieved tools from the storage room, including a small chisel and flashlight. The parishioners watched with growing interest as Father Samuel and Sister Marguerite worked together to examine the base of the statue. The pigeons shifted slightly but remained calm, their golden eyes following every movement. As they gently tapped at the stone, a hollow sound echoed beneath their efforts. Father Samuel's heart leaped. "There's something here," he whispered. With great care, they removed a section of the base, revealing a small compartment hidden within. Inside was a weathered wooden box, its edges worn with age but still intact. Father Samuel lifted it carefully, his hands trembling. The room fell silent as everyone held their breath, waiting to see what lay inside. He opened the box slowly, revealing a delicate object wrapped in faded cloth. Unwrapping it, he found a small golden reliquary, intricately designed and glowing faintly in the soft light. Inside the reliquary, a fragment of parchment rested, its ancient script still legible. Sister Marguerite leaned closer, her voice hushed. "It's a relic, and that's Latin." Father Samuel carefully lifted the parchment, his eyes scanning the words. His breath caught as he read the translation aloud. "In times of doubt, the faithful shall find comfort in her hands. Trust the signs of the divine." The pigeons cooed softly, their wings rustling as if responding to the revelation. Father Samuel looked at Sister Marguerite, his heart pounding. This was left for us, for this moment. Word of the discovery spread quickly, and soon the church was filled with villagers seeking to glimpse the relic. For Father Samuel, the moment was both awe-inspiring and humbling. He realized that the pigeons' vigil had been a divine message, guiding him to uncover a piece of the church's forgotten history. As the day wore on, the pigeons began to disperse. One by one, they took flight, their purpose seemingly fulfilled. By evening, only a single pigeon remained, perched at Mary's feet. Father Samuel approached it, his voice soft. "Thank you," he whispered, a lump forming in his throat. The pigeon tilted its head, its golden eyes meeting his one last time before it spread its wings and disappeared into the night. The church felt quieter without them, but Father Samuel knew their presence had left an indelible mark on everyone who had witnessed the event. Sister Marguerite placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "This relic will bring hope to many," she said. "You were meant to find it." Father Samuel nodded, his gaze fixed on the statue of Mary. "And the pigeons were the messengers," he murmured. A reminder that faith often reveals itself in the most unexpected ways. The following days brought an outpouring of visitors to the small village church. News of the relic and the miraculous events surrounding the pigeons had traveled far, drawing people from neighboring towns and beyond. Parishioners lit candles, whispered prayers, and gazed in awe at the reliquary displayed near the statue of Mary. Father Samuel, though overwhelmed by the attention, welcomed each visitor with kindness and humility. He made sure to emphasize the deeper meaning of the discovery, reminding everyone that the miracle was not about the pigeons or the relic alone, but about the faith they inspired. One quiet afternoon, Father Samuel sat in a pew, watching as a young mother knelt before the statue, her hands clasped tightly in prayer. Her small child stood beside her, staring at the reliquary with wide eyes. The scene filled him with a quiet sense of purpose. This was why the relic had been revealed, not for glory or fame, but to strengthen the faith of those who sought solace within the church's walls. Sister Marguerite joined him, her notebook tucked under her arm. "The diocese has approved a formal investigation," she said softly. "They're sending a team to verify the relic's authenticity." Father Samuel nodded, his gaze still fixed on the young family. "That's important," he said, "but regardless of the outcome, this has already brought hope to so many. That's what matters." Sister Marguerite smiled, her expression thoughtful. "You're right, the relic is a symbol, but the real miracle is how it's touched people's hearts." That evening, as the church grew quiet and the last of the visitors departed, Father Samuel stood alone before the statue of Mary. The flickering candlelight illuminated her serene face, casting soft shadows across the alcove. The pigeons were gone now, their mysterious vigil complete, but their presence lingered in his mind. He knelt, his hands resting on the edge of the altar. "Blessed Mother," he whispered, "thank you for guiding us to this moment. Help me to honor your message and use it to bring light to those who need it most." As he prayed, a sense of peace settled over him, as though Mary herself had answered. The weight of the past days lifted from his shoulders, replaced by a quiet determination to protect and cherish the gift that had been entrusted to his care. In the weeks that followed, the church became a beacon of faith for the surrounding community. People came not just to see the relic, but to find comfort and renewal in its story. Father Samuel noticed a change in his parishioners, a renewed sense of unity and purpose that reminded him of the early days of his ministry. One afternoon, a man approached him after Mass, his expression hesitant. "Father Samuel," he said, his voice low, "I've been struggling with my faith for years. But when I heard about what happened here, it gave me hope again, thank you." Father Samuel placed a comforting hand on the man's shoulder, his own heart full. "It wasn't me," he said gently. "It was the Blessed Mother, reminding us that faith is always within reach." As the man left, Father Samuel turned to Sister Marguerite, who stood nearby. "Do you think we'll ever understand why the pigeons were drawn to the statue?" he asked. Sister Marguerite shrugged, a small smile on her lips. "Maybe it's not for us to understand. Maybe it's enough to simply believe." Father Samuel nodded, her words resonating deeply. He realized that the mystery of the pigeons was part of the miracle, a reminder that faith often defied explanation. It wasn't about finding answers, but about trusting in the divine, even when the path was unclear. That night, as the church stood bathed in moonlight, Father Samuel placed the reliquary back in its rightful place near the statue. He lit a single candle, its flame steady and bright, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. The pigeons were gone, but their legacy remained, a message of faith, hope, and the extraordinary ways the divine could reveal itself. And as Father Samuel left the sanctuary, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the miracle of the pigeons would continue to inspire all who entered the church. Months after the discovery of the relic, the church had become a sanctuary not just for worship, but for healing and renewal. The story of the pigeons, the statue, and the hidden reliquary continued to draw visitors, each person leaving with their faith strengthened and their hearts touched by the mystery. Father Samuel had never felt more connected to his community. Parishioners who had drifted away returned, drawn by the church's newfound spirit of unity. Families gathered to light candles at the statue, their whispered prayers filling the sanctuary with a sense of peace. One crisp evening, as Father Samuel prepared to lock up for the night, a young girl approached him. She held a small, hand-drawn picture of the statue surrounded by pigeons, her innocent eyes filled with wonder. "Father," she said shyly, "do you think the pigeons will ever come back?" Father Samuel knelt to meet her gaze, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Maybe," he said gently, "but even if they don't, they've left something behind that will never go away." The girl tilted her head, curious. "What's that?" "Hope," he replied simply. "They reminded us to believe, even when we can't see the answers right away." The girl beamed, clutching her picture tightly. "I'll remember that," she said. before skipping off to join her parents. Father Samuel watched her go, his heart full of gratitude. Later that night, as the moonlight streamed through the stained glass windows, Father Samuel stood before the statue of Mary. The reliquary rested nearby, its golden surface catching the soft glow of the candles. He clasped his hands together, his voice steady as he prayed. "Thank you, Blessed Mother, for bringing us this miracle. Help us to honor your message and keep the light of faith burning in our hearts." As he opened his eyes, he felt a sense of peace unlike anything he had known before. The church, though quiet and empty, seemed alive with the presence of the divine. The memory of the pigeons remained vivid in his mind, a reminder that miracles often came in unexpected forms. In the years to come, the story of the pigeons and the relic would become legend, a tale passed down through generations as a symbol of faith and the mysterious ways the divine worked. And though the pigeons never returned, their impact was felt in every prayer, every whispered hope, and every step of faith taken by those who visited the church. Father Samuel carried their legacy with him, a constant reminder of his purpose. The pigeons had come to deliver a message, and in doing so, they had transformed the lives of everyone who had witnessed their vigil. The church, once a quiet corner of the village, had become a beacon of light and hope for all who entered its doors. As Father Samuel extinguished the last candle and prepared to leave the sanctuary, he paused to look back at the statue of Mary. Her serene face seemed to glow softly in the moonlight, her outstretched hands a symbol of grace and welcome. With a quiet smile, he whispered, "May we always have the faith to see the signs you send." And with that, he stepped into the cool night air, his heart light and his spirit renewed. The legacy of the pigeons, the statue, and the hidden relic would live on, a testament to the enduring power of faith and the extraordinary ways it could be revealed. If this story of faith and divine mystery touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep the spirit of hope and miracles alive, celebrating the unexpected ways the divine works in our lives.